Hello, this is Professor Angelia with part 4 of Works of Art's Child Development and Psychology class. We left off talking about development of object permanence, and now we're going to pick up on your child's brain, the crucial first years. In the 1970s and 80s, we thought the genes we were born with determined how our brains developed. But recent studies on brain chemistry using new technologies is showing us that the brain develops as a result of interplay between a child's heredity and the experiences he or she has during childhood. In 1994, the Carnegie Corporation of New York released the report Starting Points, Meeting the Needs of Young Children. It documented the literature on development and concluded how children function from the preschool years all the way through adolescence and even adulthood hinges in large part on their experience before the age of 3. We've learned that because the brain is remarkably unfinished at birth, these early experiences actually affect the way a child's brain becomes wired. Relationships with parents and caregivers, the sights, sounds, smells, and feelings children experience, and the challenges they meet all help determine the structure of the brain. Ultimately, this shapes the way children learn, think, and behave for the rest of their lives. Well then, just how do parents and other caregivers raise healthy, happy children and confident, competent learners? Research in brain development and school readiness suggests the following 10 guidelines. Be warm, loving, and responsive. Secure attachments are the basis of all the child's future relationships. When children receive warm, responsive care, they feel safe and secure. Because babies experience relationships through their senses, it's the expression of love that affects how a young child's brain is wired and helps to shape later learning and behavior. So please, go ahead and hold, touch, rock, sing, and smile at children. They will grow to be more curious, get along better with other children, and perform better in school than children who are less securely attached. Respond to the child's cues and clues. Infants send many signals to adults who care for them without saying a word. Among the cues and clues they send are the sounds they make, the way they move, their facial expressions, and the way they make or avoid eye contact. Children become securely attached and begin to trust when someone smiles back at them, comforts them when they are upset, and feeds them when they're hungry. In fact, infants who receive quick and warm responses to express needs typically learn to cry much less and sleep more at night. At the same time, when babies are calmed by being comforted or fed, the brain's stress response systems are turned off. Babies' brains begin to create the network of cells that help them learn to soothe themselves. You cannot spoil a newborn baby by responding to his or her needs. So those parents who said, put them in the next room, let it cry out, 100% wrong. You need them close by, you need to be responsive to them, and then they learn that the world is going to be okay. Everything is not a stressful fight or flight situation. I'm sure we all know people, we've met people where everything is, and it's a little shocking, when they have these reactions and we're like, whoa, what is that about? But, you know, they probably were left in a dark room by themselves when they were babies. Who knows? But don't do that. Talk, read, and sing to your child. All conversations give a child a solid basis for later learning. So when you're changing their diaper, tell them what you're doing. When you're putting their little clothes on, tell them what you're doing. When you're feeding them, tell them, oh, this is great. Here it comes, here it comes. All the things you say and talk is teaching them, and that's your job as a parent, to teach your children. Like the song, Teach Your Children Well. Yeah. Describing the daily routines of diaper changes and bath times are important. See, it ain't just me. When babies hear words over and over, the parts of the brain that handle speech and language develop. The more language they hear in these conversations, the more these parts of the brain will grow and develop. Read simple picture books to babies, trying to teach them at first. Because, like we said, their brains are not wired for that yet. Even some children in the preschool stage are just not there yet. They're just not ready yet. And I had an experience with a preschool teacher who was saying, oh, he's not ready to be here yet because he's not making letter formation like these other children. And I'm like, he's 4. He's 4. He's making the circles and the lines. He's trying. It's getting there. Woo! Some people take that a little too seriously. With older babies and toddlers, read stories in a way that encourages them to participate. Repeat rhymes and refrains so they can do the same. In my 2 programs that we do with Healing Families Lives, the 8th grade growth skills for 8th graders, which you need to know to be ready for high school, and then the high school goals before graduation, those are audience participation programs, because kids will get more out of it if they participate in the story or answer questions. They get more out of it because they internalize that. It means something to them, not just you. Establish routines and rituals. Repeated positive experiences, like story and song before nap, or juice and crackers before going home, provide children with a sense of security. They know what's going to happen. They know what to expect. Okay, at 2 o'clock, we have our, milk and cookies, or orange juice and crackers. They know something's going to happen, and it makes them feel secure. They're in a secure place. The world's not this big, hostile, crazy place where you never know what's going to happen. It's a secure place. And that raises them to be better adjusted. Because children learn from repetition, strong connections form between neurons in the brain, helping a child learn what to expect from this environment and how to understand the world around him. And that's the problem with a lot of kids going into school. The home environment had no structure, no schedule. They come into school and they're just totally lost in space because they don't know anything about structure and schedule. They've just been running around doing whatever they want. And so they have a harder time adjusting versus someone who's gone to preschool, or the home had a structure, like we do homework at 5, we have dinner at 6, we do our chores at 7, we start taking baths today, that helps them to feel secure in the world. And it leads them to be ready for school if they understand there's a structure and a schedule to life. Children who have safe and predictable interactions with others have also been found to do better in school later on. Encourage safe exploration and play. Parents and caregivers of the child's whole world for the first months of life. These interactions form the basis of all subsequent learning. So if you're a neglectful parent and you're just leaving your kid on their own to do whatever, your kid's not learning anything. He's not interacting with his environment. And the whole thing with the, increase, but it's probably just better reporting, in autism, in my opinion, would be more likely to neglectful parenting than it would be to getting your kid their shots. Because if your child is not having interactions with people, and then other people start trying to interact with them, it's too much stimulation. Babies will look away. They'll turn their head. So you need to interact with this baby from the day it comes home from the hospital, to get them used to interacting and being in the world. These interactions form the basis of all subsequent learning. As they begin to explore and play, be receptive when the child needs to return to you for security. And this is something I see, and this is something that happened in the past a lot, is where people just kind of turn their kids out, aside, especially during the summer, from sun up to sundown. So what is that child learning? What is that child learning? He is learning how to do whatever he wants and to be destructive. I see these kids out here, breaking things, on their driveway and stuff. What are you teaching your kid? Basically, you're teaching your kid you don't care enough to watch them or play with them, or teach them anything. That's what you're teaching your kid, is that you don't care enough to interact and be involved with them. You want them out of the house so that you can clean or, watch your soaps or whatever you're doing. And you don't want to be bothered with them until it's mealtime. And I know families like that. And that's sad, because children learn what they live. So if you're letting them be out there and wild on the streets, by themselves, only coming in for meals, basically you set them up for a Lord of the Flies situation where, all the kids are in charge of each other, and that doesn't work out so well. So, play with your kids. We had a fenced-in backyard. We had a swing set. My kids had bikes, until they got old enough, which in my book is, a middle school kid, to ride around the neighborhood. We were there. We were watching them. We were interacting. We were commenting on their behavior, because that's how they learn. So I'm going to get off my soapbox for now and back into the lesson. Make TV watching selective. Studies show that children who learn best in school have families who limit the amount of time they spend in front of the TV and are selective to the kind of shows they watch. I know parents who, they don't care what their kids watch. They let the kid turn on the TV and pick what they want to watch. So, these kids are watching, cops and shows where people getting shot and murdered and... Okay. My children, they watched KET because I wanted them to learn while they were watching TV. They get bored with playing. I go, Mom. And I say, oh, no, what about this? What about this? Oh, I did that the other day. I want to do can we watch some TV? Okay. I watched PBS. But now I had a friend whose kids did not watch PBS. They watched the regular programming. They come over here one day, and I was sitting with them, and they wanted to watch the regular programming. Well, their stepmom said, your kids don't watch that? I'm like, no, my kids watch PBS. So they got to watch it that day, because she said, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. But we had monsters fighting people and, killing and, so after that, then my kids want to watch that stuff all the time. And I'm like, no. But I found out Dad was kind of letting them do that too. So he kind of derailed my plan here. But again, children learn what they live. What's going in can come out. So, age-appropriate programming. Pick age-appropriate programming. There's a rating on television and movies for a reason. That's just not a guide. There's a reason for that. Would you let your 2-year-old watch Jason X? Think about that. You shouldn't. Don't use TV as a babysitter. Like I said, all too often, parents stick a kid in front of the TV. It's the babysitter. Children need an adult to watch with them. And that's something my ex-husband criticized on, is that, I'll be sitting there. I said, because they have questions. They have questions. We're going to watch our little 2 hours, and then we're going about our life. They have questions. There's nothing bad about mom or dad, whoever's home with them, taking time out to sit with them while they watch their shows. And because they'll say, why did he do that? Or how come they did that? And you can answer these questions for them. If you're there and involved, they learn more. Otherwise, they draw their own conclusions. And sometimes, as we said about the wiring in the brain of little people don't always jump to the best conclusions. So it's better if you're there to help out. Talk about what is viewed so it would become a learning experience for children. And everything you do with them should be a learning experience. And that was something that my grandparents' generation was good about. They'd explain everything to you. But the boomers, no offense boomers, weren't so good at that. Use discipline as an opportunity to teach, and that's what it should be. Discipline should be teaching, not punishing. As children explore their ever-expanding world, they need limits and consistent, loving adult supervision. Notice that's consistent. You can't waffle around, punish it this time, but not this time. You got to have rules and consequences for the rules. We posted them up on the bulletin board, so they knew. No excuse. You broke the rule. Here's what happens. It's right here, black and white. But didn't expect young kids to always do what is said. Don't expect young kids to always do what is said. Yeah, don't. Until they're at least 8. They're testing your limits. And then again, once you get into the preteen, teen years, they're testing their limits again. So you got to be consistent or they're going to run you down. They are normally impulsive and will hit, yell, or fall apart at times. I remember one of my sons wanted a truck. We said no because it was a very expensive truck and we couldn't afford it. And he lay down in Walmart floor, threw a fit, flailing arms, bucking, I was like, wow. So eventually, we gave him a minute, but we picked him up and put him in the cart. And then we had to take him out of the cart, and he was still upset. And he actually headbutted my nose and broke my nose. So little people can have, pretty bad temper tantrums about pretty simple things. And I just told him, I said, that was so bad. You hurt mommy's nose. Look at the blood coming out of mommy's nose. You did that because you were so mad about that truck. We couldn't afford that truck, and we told you that. You got so mad that you hurt mommy. And of course he cried, So you don't have to beat their, I just gave him words that made him feel so guilty for what he did. I didn't have to lay hand on him. That's good parenting. Use your words. Use your words. Their feelings and frustration and anger exceed their ability to control themselves. I want to say that again. Their feelings of frustration and anger exceed their ability to control themselves, especially when they're young, when they're toddlers. They're all impulse, all reactionary. And then again, in the teen years, when those hormones start pumping them up and, their emotions are running over, again, they have impulse control issues. So you just ought to be on your toes. Be there and be on your toes. Helping children learn self-control takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a day, in a week. Excuse me. They have to learn to be in control of themselves. And the more you tell them things, the more they internalize it. So as you're putting out, they're taking in. So you got to remember that. Watch what you're putting out. Put out good stuff so they can take it in. Many approaches to setting limits can work as long as they are intended to teach children rather than punish them. Never hit or shake a child. If you do, that's abuse. Brain research has shown that hitting or shaking can have long-term negative effects. You can damage your child's brain. There are people who have done this and their child ends up with lesions and even cancer in their brain. Not to mention shaken baby syndrome. This kind of interaction teaches fear, humiliation, rage, and that violence is an acceptable way of reacting. Because what you've done, they're going to think it's okay for them to do. Children learn what they live. Take time out for yourself. Count to 10 or call a friend for support. And that's if you're getting ready to lose your cool. And there's going to be times. There's many times I've walked away into my bedroom until I could compose myself enough to not throttle somebody. And then, or the bathroom. And then once you think, okay, I can deal with this now, then you can come out. But usually by then, they already know you're so upset. You had to walk away. So by the time you come back, they're usually sitting down calmly and apologize to you by the time you get back. So that works a lot better than laying a hand on them. You know, when they see that you're trying to chill out and control yourself from not hurting them, they'll notice. When you do overreact to discipline or discipline too harshly, tell the child you made a mistake and you're sorry. It's okay to apologize to the kid. You know, I snatched my son up off the side of the road one day because he didn't look both ways. And he was like, "You can hurt me." I said, "Do you know why? Did you see that car go by? That car was coming. You didn't look. You would have got squished. Have you ever seen a squished animal on the side of the road?" "Yeah." "Okay. Do you want to end up like that squished animal?" "No." "Okay. Then that's why we stop and we look both ways before we cross the road." See, even a toddler can get that. This will help repair the connection in order for the child to continue to feel loved and supported. Because that's how you want your kids to feel. Recognize that each child is unique. I had 3 sons, and each one of them is different. Carrying different temperaments and growth rates, children must be recognized for their individual accomplishments with specific praise. They will then begin to see the connections between their actions and your response. Parents who are sensitive to a child's cues and clues will encourage positive self-esteem. Choose quality childcare and stay involved. Research shows that high-quality childcare and early education can boost children's learning and social skills when they enter school. To make a good choice of childcare, visit and observe how providers respond and interact with the babies or children in their care. Do they genuinely care about children? Offering them individual attention and room to explore. Is the setting clean and safe? Carefully check the provider's references. After choosing a care setting, occasionally stop in unannounced to see what the child's world is like during the day. Offer constructive suggestions and expect progress reports. And I worked at a daycare for a couple of years. And most of these people care about your kids. They're trying to teach your kids, help your kids learn. They want to make sure your kid's taken care of. But there are going to be a couple of people who chose this as a job because they were a mom or whatever. And it's not always sunshine and rainbows in childcare. So just keep that in mind. And don't be afraid to just talk to the director or take your child out of that program and put them in another one. Because stuff does happen, unfortunately. Take care of yourself. That's not selfish. You should come first, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else. Taking care of children is the most important, most wonderful, and often the most challenging job in our society. When you are exhausted, preoccupied, irritable, depressed, or overwhelmed, it is much harder to meet the needs of young children. Treatment will help both parents and children. Nothing wrong with going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or, taking anti-anxiety or antidepressants. Nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong with this. You need to be the best you can be to take care of your kids. Don't they deserve the best mom or dad they can get? Yeah, they do. So you need to be your best. Reach out and get some help. The new brain research informs us of the uppermost importance of the relationship between caregiver and child in the first years of life, and affords us a wonderful opportunity to enrich the lives of our children and help them realize their full potential. The first years truly last forever. Okay, and then there's just one I'll go through real quick. The head and eye turning of the face, scrambled and blank stimulus. 50% of the babies like to look at faces. Only like 40 like to look at scrambled patterns. You know, these are probably going to be your artists when they grow up. And only 20% like to look at blank. And maybe these kids are going to have some attention problems later on if they're avoiding stimulation. Visual preferences in infancy, I'll just go through that real quick too. The importance of pattern rather than color or brightness was illustrated by the response of infants to a face. A piece of printed material, like a newspaper or book, a bullseye, and plain red, white, and yellow discs. Even the youngest infants preferred patterns. Purple bars show the results for infants from 2 to 3 months old. Green bars for infants older than 3 months old. And then we're looking at these here. The face, 40% would turn their head to look at a face. The words, 18%. So these are going to be your teachers and your readers later on. The bullseye, 17%. So these might be your hunters later on. Who knows? And then the red, right about 10%. The white, right about 10%. And the yellow, about 9%. So yellow is probably not the best color to use in your baby's room. A lot of people do like yellow, and it's a generic kind of color. But babies really aren't that interested in yellow. So if you can get things with faces, they like those more. And the visual cliff apparatus, I'll just mention that. It was a test that they used to do to show depth perception. A baby's placed on a table, and there's what they call the shallow side, where there's a checkered floor pattern. And then there's the deep side, which is a plexiglass, a plain, piece of glass. And then underneath, on the floor, is a checkered pattern like the floor. And babies, as they get older, start get depth perception, and they learn to go across this floor pattern. But when they see through the glass that the floor is now way down there, they don't want to crawl on that because they're afraid they're going to fall. So that's a little tool that they use, to show that. And it talks about physical development and mental and visual development comes into play with that. So if a doctor ever wants to do that to your kid, that's what they're looking for, is development mentally and probably with their eyes. Infant states. Infants spend more time sleeping than any other activity. In the first months, they sleep 67% of the time. So when they're sleeping, you sleep too. Get you some sleep while they're sleeping. 11% is active waking, so they'll be awake about 11% of the time. 10% is alert and inactivity. It's when they're not trying to do anything, but they're just kind of looking around at stuff. They like to check it out. 7% drowsy, trying not to go to sleep. Yeah, we've all seen that if you're a parent. And 5% of the time crying. And when they're crying, it's not anything personal against you. They're crying because they need something. They're hungry. They don't feel comfortable. They're too hot, too cold. If they use a pacifier, they need that to help them feel secure. They have a dirty diaper that they need changed. They might have a piece of blanket or something up under them that they can't take care of themselves. They're trying to let you know there's a problem. Hey, mom, hey, dad, there's a problem. Help me. That's why they're crying. They're not crying because, they don't like you. Like a lot of problems with people like that is baby hates me. It cries all the time. No, the baby's telling you there's a problem, and maybe that, you're giving it attitude makes it feel like you don't like it. Maybe that's the problem. So, a baby's gonna cry 5% of his day. Just learn to deal with that. You know, just hold them, rock them, soothe them, whatever way you can. Pacifiers are pretty good. But like I said, if they're hungry, their diaper's dirty, or they're uncomfortable, they're going to keep crying until you figure out what the problem is. And like I said, my kids, we kept them in the baby bed, at the foot of the bed, or beside the bed. They were all sleeping through the night by 3 months. And when they were a year old, we moved them into their own room. So, we didn't have these problems that other people talk about where, the baby has colic and they're feeding them cereal at 3 months and they're not even finishing the whole bottle yet. Or they're putting the kid in the next room wanting them to cry it out. We didn't have any of these problems because I was smart enough to know I didn't know how to raise children. So I took parenting classes at our local neighborhood place. Yeah, with each kid. So I learned, how to do it right. And I think that everyone who's going to be a parent should have to take parenting classes so you learn how to do it right because it's the most important job in the world. I kid you not, it is. So that was our bell. And so that's the end of class today. If you found this educational, informational, or just entertaining, feel free to check the link in the description and donate to help me keep producing these classes on YouTube for people's, education. Because I gotta make a living. Until next time.